Hello there, welcome. Here we are live again for this Sunday's 5:55 p.m. We're here every Sunday to make a live broadcasting out on Facebook and through the LinkedIn page and also out on YouTube. Harry will be taking over in a few moments to discuss his collated page and all of the different comments that come from the contributors on those. But now it's time to look at what we do here at Autistic Association, the charity that supports Autistic Radio. I'm reporting to the group that we have an offer to make a presentation to a group of controversial professionals. They're called the PBS Association. They're part of the behaviourist concept. A lot of people lump them in together with ABA. Now, we have been cooperating with ABA organisations and PBS organisations here at Autistic Radio for one important purpose, and that is to be helpful and to bring the autistic experience and counteract some of the things that, quite rightly, for many years, the autistic population have taken issue with. We don't see our role here as a group of protest. It's great that other people take part in protest because it brings the worst excesses of some professionals' behaviour to the attention of the public. But if we think we are going to ban ABA, or if we think we are going to ban PBS, when this is a multi-billion pound industry, and also the professionals in it, by far the majority of them feel that they are in it for the right reasons. The concept of taking them down, that some of the autistic people out there in various spaces feel is possible, just doesn't ring true to me. However, if we take the best of what they're doing and amplify it, if we discuss our experience in an open and honest way, we can change what happens and we can help them to see us more clearly. It feels as though if we don't help them to see us more clearly, then we are abdicating our responsibility as advocates. Unfortunately, they don't always take us seriously. Recently, you know that we were invited and we were celebrated for making a presentation at the UK Society for Behaviour Analysts down in London at their annual conference. And we have just been invited to do something very similar, very last minute, at a Newcastle conference for the PBS group. Their conference is potentially bigger, more in person, and also it's going to be beamed across the world. I have not yet completely refused to take part, but I have offered something to them. But as yet, I do not feel as though we are going to be, or the charity that we support is going to be fully compensated for the time and effort that it would take to do what we have been asked to do. So, unfortunately, going forward, I'm going to probably decline what you, the listening public, might feel I should be taking part in. I feel as though I might be criticised for not just agreeing and doing something, but from my point of view, because I'm an outside party, and because I don't get career advancement, and because I'm not being paid by an organisation to go and actually attend the conference, I have requested that the charity that I would be representing receives a reasonable fee. And the fee that's been offered so far feels generous to them because they are quite used to having their own people speak for free, and they are quite used to bringing in autistic people and using them as examples. That whole feeling of the autistic person speaking their truth, they're used to that coming to them for free as well. But here at Autistic Radio, we see ourselves as a more professional organisation than that, and we can't be subsidising as a charity the work of a multi-billion-pound industry and the work of well-paid professionals. So that's where we stand at the moment. If anybody wants to email me, news@autisticradio, and tell me I should be doing things differently, I would be happy to listen to them. But so far I would say no. Unless you're paid correctly as an outsider, as an advocate, you shouldn't really be demeaning yourself, and the message that you give will be undervalued if you do so. Serious point there, Harry. Can we move on to your lovely live, please?
Thanks, Jules. Good evening, everyone. This is Harry's Facebook for Sunday, the 6th of April 2025. This is where we share the Facebook posts from the Autistic Radio's Facebook page and have discussions on the topics that are shared. And the first post is from Sophie James, which is a personal blog, a neurodivergent girl spreading awareness from my personal experiences. And what Sophie shared is the following. No matter what the situation or place is, I always feel so different. I feel like the way I think or see things, or even how I react, is so different to the norm. Not only am I a vegan, which is somehow always an insult to everyone else or a topic of conversation, but I was raised in a very peculiar family, which I adore and wouldn't change for the world. I have strong values and morals and really have the brain of a child, but the wisdom of someone older. I like to play and joke. I love to wear pink and explore. I find small talk very dull and difficult. I don't know many things other people generally do know, and I can be very blunt. I don't control my facial expressions, and when someone annoyed me, they will know. I'm also very strong-willed and find myself analysing everyone to an extreme level. I feel I've learnt so much about living a mindful, peaceful life by prioritising living life to its fullest, as opposed to the material side of things. But it makes me sad to see so many others in pain with their own habits, way of perceiving the world, and the way they judge others. The world is a changing place. It always has been, and generation clashes are something we have all experienced. Generations above us just not understanding the way younger generations see things. I wish people cared more about how you treat others, treat yourself, and as a person than what you have or the things that you've done or how well you fit in. Some of the nicest people I have ever met don't have a lot and have never seen. Some of the nicest people I have ever met don't have a lot and have never even left the country. They are just genuine people. But at the end of the day, all I can do is live my life the way I choose and treat others with respect as well as myself. It's so easy to get annoyed at everyone. It's so easy to get frustrated by people when they look over you, make annoying comments, or are just so stuck in their ways they can't see outside of that. It's so easy to fall into the trap of caring about any of these things. So I'm learning how to let go and move on with my head held high and my mental health being the priority. The only person that can get to me is me, because the world is tough and there will only be a few people who truly understand you and who you can be comfortable around. Let bygones be bygones and just focus on yourself. You will feel the results. What's people's thoughts on this post? The reason that I shared this is it feels a lot of the approach that I certainly have. You know, the way things are and the injustices of life and the way people have treated, you know, the disrespect, the generation wars that was mentioned even in that post. It's just like there's so many frustrating things in this world and society. And I try myself not to let it grind me down, I should say. I try my best not to let it grind me down. I try my best to think of my mental health and well-being, because it's so easy to get caught in the overthinking part of asking myself, why are things the way they are? What's the logic over it? Why is the material and the consumerism of things so appealing over the welfare of other fellow human beings? It drives me crazy individually. I just cannot get it. And that's what a lot of this post appeals to me, especially as the personal kind of point of someone reflecting and someone giving a view about themselves.
It feels like a bit of self-care, really, doesn't it? Whatever kind of human being you are, the world and the whole society out there is too big. And sometimes it's necessary to retreat a bit and concentrate on the most important things to yourself and guard yourself and look after yourself.
I find more and more that I'm just concerning myself with the stuff that I can actually change and letting go of stuff a lot more that's just out of my hands. And I couldn't do that before. I couldn't let go very easily. I think it's something that I've really been learning to do over the last few years.
Are these structural things that you've been letting go, Nicola? Not to be too personal.
I think it was meaning just thoughts, ideas, things, people, just stuff I can't control. Just like, oh well, let it go.
Yeah. See, this post makes me think about the connection and relationship we have with the world. That kind of interface where we meet it. And often we can be negative and critical about a lot of its structures, and yet we seem dependent upon them and want to be a part of them. My experience has been to develop another way of living I'm still very much connected with it all, but I limit that. So a lot of the disappointments that come in are often at compromise. I might not be explaining this well enough, but it's just a sense I get that it's somewhere in that interface, that connection with the world, that is inherited almost, that we grow up expecting, and it's structural. And so when you said letting go of things, I thought, well, there are some things people can't let go of because they're structural. The family, perhaps, the domestic, they need a house, all these basic needs, and things you may have evolved into having as the content of your life that may be unavoidable to a certain extent. Whereas I've evolved into a life where it's kind of just me and it, and, you know, I take it on that level.
Yeah, I get that. I think what basically I've been doing, I mean, when I was younger, I was very political minded in terms of the fairness. I know that sounds silly, but forget the political side. I was very minded about how I felt was the injustice of life and how the way society works, the country works, or whatever works around. Because I remember being brought up by a loving family, going through education, getting taught things about what is fair and what is unfair, what's the right thing to do and what's the wrong thing to do. And then I just kept seeing people prospering by doing the wrong thing, and you've been told that that's the wrong thing to do, but somebody else does it, and you actually agree that it's the wrong thing to do, but it's like doing the wrong thing is being rewarded. I just couldn't understand that and why it was allowed and why there was no outrage. It just seemed, oh, that's the way it is. It's unfair, but that's the way it is to a certain degree. And I used to read too much news. I used to watch too much news. And what I've done gradually over time is I don't watch any news or read newspapers in terms of looking at, you know, things that are going on in the world, even particularly politics and all that. And if I do, it's in bite sizes and manageable sizes in terms of how I will take that on board. And the way I cope with life is I feel that I do things in the community to try and make things a bit better. Not make things absolutely a lot better, because that's impossible to do, but do something that's a wee bit positive. It's a bit more progressive. It makes things like simple things like people complain about holding the fence, or somebody talks to me and it makes them feel a little bit better. Things like that. That's what helps me move forward. And the only frustrating thing is when you go to someone else's house or go to some other environment where there's this lot of news in your face and you can't switch off. And there's been a lot of it recently, but just because it's entertaining to a lot of people. But I feel that I can manage it a lot better now than I used to, and that's what makes me more healthier than I used to be. The next post is from Neurodivergent Empowered, who are a disability service, and says our mission is to empower, educate and inspire 1 million autistic and ADHD individuals to live a life of authentic joy and happiness. And what they've shared is a presentation, Free to Be Me, and it's about women needing to, or the women's need to lead differently to men, according to the post. What I'll do is I'll read the supporting post first. And what it says is, I believe the real secret to success is playing the cards you were dealt really well. takes a deep level of acceptance to work with what you have rather than constantly wishing things were different. Denying the reality only holds you back. But acceptance doesn't mean staying stuck. It opens the door to creativity, to finding bold, brave ways to live, lead, and show up that might not look like anything you've seen before. It takes courage to do things differently, especially when what you admire in others doesn't match the life you're living. But I believe in making space for both what matters to you and how you're truly able to show up right now. Because success, to me, whatever it takes to live your life of your own design, with what you've got and the way only you can. And the presentation itself, called Free to Be Me. I don't know if this is neurodivergent thing or not, but to me it just feels obvious. Women need to lead differently to men. I'd love us to start letting women lead in the way we're designed to lead. Right now, I'm leading with my child beside me because that's my reality. I don't have a backup. So what do? Sit on the sidelines and wait until he's older? What if he never becomes fully independent? Do I just give up on what matters to me? Not because one way is better than the other. Not because there's something wrong with men. Just because we're different. We're cyclical. We're relational. We move through the world with rhythms and responsibilities that often don't fit the liner, always on model of leadership that's been held up as the gold standard. I've spoken openly about this before. I'll say it again. If this tour was just 10 days earlier in my intellectual phase, I would be having a very different experience than I am now. That matters. I find I find ways to do things I'm called to do, in my way, at my pace, in the season of life I'm in. And right now, that season has more freedom than it did when he was younger, and I'm embracing that. This is what leadership can look like. It's valid, it's powerful. But we need people to go first, to lead visibly in ways that honour our bodies, our lives, and our responsibilities, and not hide them. To show others that it's not only possible, but it's real, it's needed, and it's enough. What's people's thoughts on this post?
I've put in the text that it could be said that leading itself is a male concept. But I'm also thinking that the earlier post by Sophie, I was thinking, people who write so well and think so thoughtfully, I would like them to be, these days they talk about influencers. Maybe that's leadership, it's like people who influence, but, I've not got a great deal of respect for the social media concept of influencer. But these things are cultural, so when you're looking for voices to respond to in the world, one like Sophie's might be one you would respond to. And so that could be seen as a kind of leadership. But the word leader always makes me feel a bit uncomfortable.
Yeah, the word leader, it sounds like an authority figure in some ways, even though many ways it's not. And if you are the so-called leader, there's pressure on you to lead the way. But there's many that are inspired to lead a way forward, not the way forward, not the only way forward, but a way in accordance to what they feel is maybe the best way for them. And they can lead the way for others if others want to join them. I think that's what the post is trying to say. And it wasn't saying other things are wrong, or certain leaderships will be appeared as wrong, or will be definitely wrong in many people's eyes, depending what it is. But a lot of these leaderships are more like dictatorships, and it's more like I'm leading and you will listen. But then again, it wouldn't be a leader, would it? It would be the song sort of word. I mean, the word lead is a strange one.
This is a man's post, isn't it?
No, not from what I'm taking from it. It's a women's post. I'm only guessing.
In the chat there, Raymond said maybe an inspiration or a space holder.
One of the images, it says, and right now that season has more freedom than it did when he was younger.
I think we're talking about the child. I think it's a mother and child, from what I've read from it.
Okay.
My experience of leadership is that the people that are put up to leaders in businesses and schools and such like, many of them are not real leaders. Many people see leadership as a status rather than a active job. To lead people means that you have to really take them into consideration. And my experience of the first leader I ever came across was my mother, because it was my mother who would lead me into all kinds of different situations and explain those situations to me, look out for me, and try to do the thing that a leader does, which is to inspire and bring the best out. So if there is a leadership role that should be emulated, I would say it was the role of mother. Unfortunately, in lots of societies, we have this gender-biased thing where fathers are put into a different role. And that role is more about discipline and pushing somebody beyond their capabilities and, to some extent, ignoring the evidence in front of them that the person needs help. And it seems to me that as I am an adult, the leadership roles that I'm confronted with are people who feel that that stereotypical male role is leading, and it isn't. It's somewhere between the two. That's my Tupney Halfpennyworth.
That's a fair point. Yeah, I can see where you're getting at there. There's a stereotypical gender bias thing and what leadership actually is it leading the way, or is it just forcing the way? Because forcing the way isn't a leader either. And what's been said earlier is, from Raymond's comment, about inspiration, space holder, that sort of thing. you're definitely right about the role. I mean, my parents are definitely leaders, both mother and father in different ways, different characteristics, different sort of advice, different. Not everything was completely right, but it was done with good intentions. But in many ways, I feel that I've kind of led in many ways in the things that I've done. But I always look, being chairperson of things. That doesn't mean that you're the boss. It means that you're the lead or the lead head. And I've always looked at that as kind of moving things kind of forward, but making sure everybody's coming forward with you, and it's democratic and it's fair. And you don't let it go to your head, because, as Jules has said, the leadership thing, a lot of people take that on board as a power thing rather than an actual thing to do, and they don't actually lead. They demand, they force things, or they stop things, or maybe they're just not good at it at all. It's just, there's many ways. I mean, it's an interesting word, lead.
The other thing about leadership is it's about communication, isn't it? And the difficulty we have as autistic people is the way we communicate is not accepted by the majority of the population. So when we're in leadership roles, we end up having to mask into a role. And that can be very difficult for us because we're play acting leadership instead of doing it naturally. I'm fortunate that in my small leadership role I have at the moment in my business, I don't feel as I have to play act the leadership role, but that's a rarity. It comes from having employees and people who work with me that are neurodivergent. In another business, I think I would be seen as somebody who communicates inappropriately in lots of circumstances unless I take on the mask of leader. And as soon as you start taking on the mask of leader, you end up in stereotypes if you're not careful. I think we can see that in some prominent autistic people out there.
Raymond says, is leadership neurodivergent? I mean, I'm trying to kind of think of my examples. I mean, as a leader, or as I'm doing something which I feel that I am leading the way, there has been accusations against me like I'm power hungry, or I'm too demanding, or I'm a grump. I take things too seriously, because what we've kind of talked about before is a lot of autistic people put their heart and soul into things. And it might seem like you're driving ahead or trying to hit ahead without other people, which I certainly do not intend to do, or been accused of doing. People thinking power goes to my head. No, it's not. It's just about taking things on board. If I'm given a role or taking on a role, I take it as serious as I would be anything that I'm really interested in and really feel it's worthwhile doing. So, but sometimes, as you say, Jules, you put a mask on in a way to try and keep the peace or to deal with certain situations. And then in many ways that may look stereotypical, and it may create a stereotype on yourself or on other people. It just depends on what you're doing and how you do it, and how circumstances has also been mentioned about how they come about and how people actually interpret it, what a leader actually is. Do they believe a leader's actually a leader, or they just believe a tokenistic thing, and they might just go to power crazy people's heads? The next post is from Rosie Weldon's Autistic Life, which is a personal blog described as I am an autistic adult that shares my life openly and honestly online. And she shared a quote, and it says, "The right people won't ask you to change." What's people's thoughts on that?
Okay, I'm going to answer what's going on in the text there. Nicola is occasionally reading out things that she thinks are appropriate from the comments, and also things from the private text if she feels that that adds to the conversation, because we all put things in private text when we don't necessarily feel that our voice is working for it. So that's the role that Nicola is taking. She's making decisions on what she feels from the private text will add to the conversation with her own way of dealing with that. I look at this meme and it says the right people won't ask you to change. And I know what the sentiment is behind that. The sentiment is you're good enough as you are. You shouldn't be forced to be somebody you're not. And then I think, because I'm an autistic person, I have to go further than the black and white on that. And I have to say that the right people for me have described what I am to myself, given me perspective, and that has actually encouraged me to change the way I behave, or change the way I act, or even change the way I think sometimes. So I would also say that the right people won't demand that you change, but the right people will be somebody who is willing to engage with you honestly enough and deeply enough, and that often brings about change that you choose yourself. So I suppose the meme comes from the idea that we as autistic people are so often told that our weirdness, our oddness is unacceptable in certain circumstances, and we shouldn't have to change all the time. But I would put the caveat is that the human being is a learning animal, and we throughout the whole of our lives go through enormous change in our ideas. And if we don't change as we're growing and moving on towards death, then we haven't taken the best advantage of what's around us, because we haven't really experienced and we haven't really engaged. Because change is what happens to you when you live.
I see what you're saying there, Jules. Largely agree with it, although the bit I disagree with is this, that you have to go out and experience life or you're not gaining full benefit. I feel that is pressure. So, but I do agree that we are constantly changing. And my initial reaction to this meme is, well, what is meant by change, you know? Are we expecting people to ask us to change what, in a positive way, or why do we need change from someone else? I mean, engagement is great. It's great to have feedback. And it's great to, you know, recognize the affordance of advantage in life. But I don't know. I think it's impossible to be fixed.
Yeah, I think from what I'm seeing from this meme, this quote, is someone that may have had experience of people saying, and I've had it myself in some ways, is like, stop acting weird, stop acting the way you are, and act the way you're supposed to, or act the so-called norm. But the right people won't ask you to change who you are and who you are yourself. But of course, as there is with everything, it can be taken from different scenarios in different ways, because it's too simple sounding. Because the right people may be asking you or giving advice on how to change habits, how to change certain things in your life to make it better for you. And you're actually receptive to that. And you even want that. So it's like the right people won't ask you to change, maybe, unless you want to.
Yeah, it's kind of like a double negative, isn't it? It starts off with, oh, I'm being asked to change, which feels negative. So I'm going to negate that by saying, the right people won't ask me to change. Is that a correct reading? I love the mystery of some of these things. They just don't make sense right away, which is not a criticism. It's just, I find it intriguing. And it's possibly a way to evade capture, because our information is being outsourced all the time online. So we have to be careful what we say.
Yeah, I think if you condense your thoughts down to a simple meme or a simple sentence or a saying, then you have to expect that people are going to try and dig into that and find other versions and other meanings and other inspirations from it. And that in itself is a good thing. It is a bit, live, eat, love, eat, pray, or whatever it is, and you stick it on your fridge. But those things are also inspiration. So whatever makes you think. And I agree with you there, Raymond, and I think that's really good that you nuance what I said. You don't have to go out there and fully challenge yourself to be experiencing life. I agree with you. I think it is a missed opportunity if you don't engage in life, but you can engage in life by thinking within your own head and within your own space and without even communicating with other people. That is a full-on reality. You do not have to take the stimulus from outside people. I just feel that if you start off as an egg, you get birthed and you live a life and you're going to die, and that journey is the journey. That's it. And change during that period. There are so many opportunities to think and experience, and fixing yourself at any one part of those times and journeys in any way feels to me as though that is missing something.
Well, the one that gets me is when people say, oh, you'll be on your deathbed regretting everything you never did. And I think, how dare you? As if life isn't high pressure enough, And that'd be like thinking, well, I could panic like that right now. Have I done enough? I mean, at my age, there's not much time left, so I might as well enjoy myself.
Oh, absolutely. If I died tomorrow, I would not have any regrets. I really feel there's nothing I can think of that I need to deal with that would cause me regrets if I had a day to live.
Not even doom piles. I mean, I've got stuff in this house that I can barely budge now, and I really need to get cleaned out.
Oh no, I'm a hoarder too. The only difference is that I have more space between my stuff than you do.
It plays havoc on the hips, mate. You know, trying to negotiate. Even my dog can't hear a tongue.
Well, you know the issue there, and it's up to you whether it's whether the discomfort of living with all the crap is worth it or not. The decision making of deciding what is and isn't worth keeping is so hard that maybe it's better to just to bugger up your hip getting around it.
Well, what happened to those women on TV who did that TV show, Aggie and thingy? I mean, I'd pay for this,
I would murder them as soon as they came through the door. How dare they go and disrupt other people's lives like that?
Not even if you invited them and asked them round because you're in dire need of their assistance.
Well, if you feel that, you get them in. But for me, having somebody else dealing with my hoarding is an assault on me.
Got you. You were talking about the personal things. I'm just talking about some old furniture and carpeting and various other household things.
I've just think this kind of loops back to like the first post, and it talked about success being whatever it takes to make you feel like you've lived your life the way that you want to as well. And it just feels, sorry, my dog just come in and said agreed with me, but I think there's just a lot about acceptance going on in these posts in my head anyway.
Yeah, and acceptance takes confidence, doesn't it? You have to be confident that you're good enough and you don't take in all of the perceived criticism that happens out there. And I feel that as autistic people, sometimes we're not very good at that. We don't have that bland confidence that comes with the neurotypical experience. We are much more self-critical and questioning. So maybe the meme is a good way of reminding us of that.
I think confidence might be loving yourself, which for me is like experiencing situations of like where you're content, where you are good in yourself. And they can help you, expose and unravel the things that inhibit you from feeling like that stop you feeling like that. The self-criticism that comes in, because that has roots. And so a good, comfortable situation explored, it's something in that. I think when I think back, like, do I have confidence? To a certain extent, yes. And it comes from that almost love in myself. It's a strange thing to explain. Yeah. A Buddhist koan is a phrase that makes the meditator ponder meaning. So the classic one is, what is the sound of one hand clapping? Or when I point a finger at the moon. That one's too complicated.
This is my sound of one hand clapping.
Well, there's a simple autistic way of dealing with it. Here it is, it's this, and you clap something. Very matter of fact, very logical.
I figured that one out when I was about 4.
You've just enlightened me.
Isn't it like chicken and egg? Is that a Buddhist koan? What came first, the chicken or the egg? I just can't get my head around that because it's obviously the egg. Chickens weren't evolved when fish were laying eggs and dinosaurs were laying eggs. So the egg came first.
Yeah, you've gone meta.
That makes sense to me, Jules.
Right, so if some smart-ass asks you whether the chicken or the egg came first, just explain, well, it's obviously the egg, shut the fuck up.
I'll keep that in mind. The next post is from Robbie Prosser. And what it's about being autistic and anxiety with phone calls. And it says, I can neither answer the phone nor make calls. I can do little more than identify myself and agree someone I trust can act on my behalf. The issues include wrong numbers, automated systems, answer machines and leaving messages, calls being recorded, including just number for purpose of billing, expectation of quick responses, waiting in queues, interruptions, sales calls, scams, and calls from people I don't know. On the wrong numbers, this causes me to feel humiliated, which overwhelms me, which often causes me to have autistic meltdowns. Automated systems, I would find this extremely confusing and I would be fearful of making a mistake. This again would make me feel humiliated and could cause me to have an autistic meltdown. Calls being recorded, I would fear my mistakes being recorded, adding to my already low self-esteem. Expectation of quick responses, I already struggle with slower processing. This becomes worse under stress. I'm unable to think clearly or logically under pressure. The stress could overwhelm me and could cause me to have an autistic meltdown. Waiting in queues. Waiting in queues causes rumination and catastrophizing. Interruptions. I struggle with being interrupted because difficult getting back to what I was doing. I don't, however, need of like routine. I just struggle with anything unpredictable. Sales calls, scams, calls from people I don't know. I struggle in any situation. I don't know how to respond. Most people assume it is a learning issue, which it is not. I struggle with the negative emotions involved, which can cause me to have an autistic meltdown. I have no trouble with video calls, like Zoom or Google Meet, which have been arranged. Because people insist on only providing contact by phone, I am forced to rely on people to support me, and it limits my independence. Things that would help: phone numbers being optional, alternative method of contact to suit person needs, and Spectrum Sloth helped out with the woodwork. So thank you, Spectrum Sloth, for the help with the artwork. What's people's thoughts on this?
This is good, informative, and very constructive. Thanks to Spectrum Sloth for the help with the artwork, and thanks, Robbie, for bringing up this subject. You indicate that independence is an issue for you, because one of the solutions I would think of immediately would be to have someone else handle phone calls for you, but I can see how that affects your feeling of independence, especially when you may have very important things to discuss and say. So it's not easy. It's this bad side of technology sometimes is that it expects you, it demands a lot of you. And I can imagine you must enjoy some part of phone use where, like, say, you're chatting to a trusted friend, say, or someone you trust, and you could maybe enjoy being on the phone. But also, I know some people who just don't like physically being on phones. And so alternative methods of contact to suit your needs looks like the solution or the best option. And what are those alternative methods? There are Skype calls, phone calls that are visual, say. But that doesn't bypass all the stuff you get with the industry where you're in queues and all the other negative things that you mentioned there. And it certainly is very difficult to avoid spam. It's a terrible plague. But I'll leave it at that. These are my initial thoughts. We'll obviously get a lot out of this discussion.
Yeah, I totally agree with the anxiety of the phone call. Even now, I can never get used to the phone call. It just feels so strange. If you're not speaking to someone that you know, and sometimes even then it can feel awkward. It's just, things like that's been discussed, like sales and basically phoning an organisation or even then phoning you, it just feels awkward. I don't like phoning anybody really. Prefer text messaging, even though not great conversation, just to pass information. It's not very often I actually phone anyone. And I always feel, no matter if I do know the person, it's like I was speaking about before, about this preparation, this kind of even sort of not totally scripting, but having an idea of what to say. And I know that might sound simplistic, but it's not. It just seems, a lot of thought. I mean, I'm involved with the local Tenants and Residents Association, and people do contact me regarding things like issues, like housing issues, like, council tenant issues like antisocial behaviour, etc. And they phone me or would like me to phone them to provide advice, or it's in a conversation, or just provide information. And it's usually someone I don't really know. And it's always like this sort of anxiety to actually do this because I'm doing it myself. When I'm actually phoning different things, like, for instance, the bank, the local service providers, council even, there's been times in the past where I've actually got someone else to do it for me, because usually my dad, and because it seemed that he had the confidence to speak and ask kind of maybe so-called tricky questions. Like, usually when I'm on the phone to anybody, I like to get off the phone as soon as possible because it's finding quite anxious, anxiety-inducing. Although I've got a bit more confident as time went on. And I always prefer just be face-to-face than to a phone call. Maybe sometimes it's not ideal to be face-to-face, but I just find that just even talking about it, how real it is, and the autistic meltdown, there has been times in the past where someone's phoned my house phone and it's obviously a scam, and I put the phone down on them abruptly. But still, I feel terrible in doing so, and I spend the next couple of hours going, I could have done with that better. I could have been politely tell them to go away. It's just, so what I generally do now is, if I don't recognise a number, I don't answer it. But it just shows you there's just so much in this, and it's so real. And thank Robbie for sharing it.
Yeah, it's kind of intimidating when they say that these calls shall be recorded. I was just rereading that part of Robbie's post there.
Yeah, but it's the other thing. The calls may be recorded for training purposes, you generally say. If you're phoning an organisation, I think they all say that actually, and it's an automated thing. It says that to you whilst you're in a queue. And there's been times where I've been in a queue, especially when it's been things like Virgin Media and stuff like that, because it's such a big organisation and there's always in demand for people, to speak to someone on the phone. And sometimes speaking to someone on the phone about a particular problem that's in your house and they're far, far away and you're trying to explain to them, particularly with different accents and things like that, because the Scottish accent, even when you're trying to speak as clear as I'm doing now, still seems to throw people, depending who you're talking to. So it creates all this sort of stress and anxiety, and then you even think about it before you even do it, and you're expecting it, so you're anxious before you even go on the bloody phone. So, yep, can identify with all that.
That bit when they say this will be recorded for training purposes is usually when I get all the swear words out in my system.
I think one of the things that makes it really difficult is if you've had to go through one of those press 2 for this and then speak your postcode after the beep, and then it can never understand my accent, so it's always just really, really confusing. And then I eventually get connected to a person, by which time I'm just like, what am I phoning for? Like, it's just so disorientating.
Yeah, that's classic. You totally forget why you even called, or all your prepared speeches, and you've been trying to figure out that language of like Alpha, Bravo, Romeo stuff.
I don't know if anybody said it, but I take the advantage of using these chatbots whenever it's possible. The online chat in text. It means that I don't sit worried waiting for a human being on the end of a telephone line in one of these things. I get through some of the silly AI bit, and then it says, because I ask it silly questions, it gets me on to, I can't deal with that. I'll get a real person to text you in a minute, and then I can do other things. So I can be on the computer doing other things, reading my emails, and then just join the chat when it's necessary. But I've already written everything I want to say down, including all of the questions I think they're going to ask in a little text document. So when they ask the same things I put in the first place, it's cut and paste and ready in there. I don't know if that helps anybody.
No, that's a good shout, and you can get callbacks from that as well, and it saves you sometimes waiting 2 to 3 hours on a waiting list for some kind of very important, say, benefit conversation, which would probably only last 5 minutes anyway.
Yeah, that's a good call. I've actually did that a few times. I've done that with a certain bank. And I didn't realise you could actually do this until a friend of mine showed me, because both of us aren't really that good on the phone, and because of what we just talked about, basically. And he had to deal with Amazon, which is a big company, and they're not very easy. They're not really easy in the bot thing either, but it's easier to get the information across without sitting on the phone for hours. And it could be hours, and that's very anxiety inducing. But if you can get the information and you've already written it down, and then you can just put it in, because it's generally questions and kind of inquiries and things. And I have done that with certain ones. And if it's an option, it's certainly something to take on board. I mean, The thing is generally I don't actually use the phone that often. A lot of the time I actually use email, to contact someone, like, if it's immediate and more immediate than that, I kind of force myself to phone, but the text thing in any setting is the best way forward because you've got time to think about the information that's going to be shared and be understood. But the chatbot thing is certainly a thing that I've used in the past and has been very beneficial.
I think I was just thinking about how it can have really serious consequences, the phone thing. And I mean, I think it's one of the big hurdles that I have with dealing with like the GP, going to the doctor for stuff, is having to communicate over the phone that need, especially trying to get past the receptionist to just get an appointment. And it's great if there's other ways like chatbots or email or web forms that you can use. It does make it an awful lot more accessible.
I'm not sure if there's a way to bypass the waiting game on the phone first thing in the morning for a GP appointment. There's no chatbot there that you can negotiate with, as far as I know.
Yeah, exactly. It's like some very important services are phone only, and I think as well, if you're struggling and you're needing to be on like benefits at all, like times you're like, we will phone you, and you just have to kind of be that somebody's just going to phone you, and you're going to have to be ready with all this important information, and that can be really stressful if they call you when you're 20 minutes from home.
Yeah, I totally get that. I've had that. There was actually an occasion many years ago now. I was about to leave the house and my house phone went, and I answered it, and it was someone it was DWP, it was the welfare, it was benefits, and I got so much of a fright that I put the phone down, and I panicked after that. They'll stop my money, and I ran down at my parents' house and I didn't know the phone number, so we had to actually search this what phone number and be apologetic and say it was an autistic meltdown, and it was okay in the end. But oh my god, the anxiety I went through! I actually panicked because it was just the worst time they could have phoned. I was about to leave to go somewhere, and I was really annoyed at myself for even answering the phone. But the thing with doctors and all that as well, like recent times, I've had telephone appointments, like there's kind of issues, that I was kind of concerned about, and what they generally do now, as far as I'm aware, is they phone you first before they'll see in their surgery. And it's just, how do I explain this on the phone? And they say they'll phone you in the afternoon. So you're waiting between maybe 12 o'clock to maybe 5 o'clock and see if they'll phone routine that time, and you can't relax. You're just sitting waiting. It's like waiting for the gas man to come to do his check. It's like waiting for that to happen so you can relax and get on with your day. And it's the same with the phone call, except it's more anxiety inducing because it's like, I know it sounds strange, but you're like speaking to someone that isn't there. They're not with you. You're actually speaking to somebody else, which is a strange thing to say because I'm doing that here right now, in a different way, but it's still audio. But at least I know what time it's happening and all that, which makes all the difference. Yes, Raymond, I do have an answer phone now. Yep, that's one of the reasons why I got one, was because of these phone calls in case that I missed it, and it has helped in the past. That they've phoned, and of course they leave a message and then I can get back to them and there's no problem there. But that was one of the reasons why I got the answer phone in the first place, because that actually happened to me.
Is it a landline you're referring to, Harry? I was meaning the answer phone on a mobile because you were leaving the house.
Yeah, it was a landline, this one. That's a kind of official kind of phone number that I give. to organisations unless they need to get to me, more quickly. Although I think I've given my mobile as an option as well. But I'm talking about years ago. I did have a mobile at the time as well, but it just seemed the best option for that. Or maybe that was the phone number they had in their records.
Yeah, landlines are panicky. I gave mine up years ago. And I know you can be able to see the phone number on it, but very often you couldn't know who was calling. There was no display. And I'm very much with you now in this thing. If I don't recognise the number, I'm not answering. It can't be that important. And if they don't leave a message, it can't be that important.
I just want to say a safety thing about telephones is that it's entirely possible for scammers, when they're phoning both your mobile and your home phone number, to show a completely different number on the screen that you might recognise as your bank or wherever. So if somebody is phoning you, you should not give out any of your personal identity information for your bank or for your credit card or for your email account or anything like that, because this is the way that people get convinced on confidence tricks.
I actually had a woman call me once and saying, why are you phoning me all the time? And I had to explain someone had hijacked my phone number and was using it for spams.
It's frightening that can happen, but it must be able to happen because it can seem to do everything else. And it's a horrible thing to happen to you. It's actually your number is getting used, and then someone, which I'm surprised it's happening, but fair enough if they do, is actually pulling you up because of your number. Not because you've done it, but they're actually phoning the number to pull that person up that's responsible.
The other tip, I think, is that if you do have a number that's called you and you are in any way suspicious, one way, if you Google it, Google the number, it will usually give you one of these websites that tells you whether it's a suspicious caller or not. But as I said, if they're spoofing somebody else's number, like your bank's number, that doesn't work. But some of the numbers that come up, if you Google them, it'll tell you whether it's a spam call or a dangerous call.
Yeah, there's a price to pay for all these technologies. Even a kitchen knife can give you a wee cut.
Yeah, that's good advice, Jules. I've actually done that myself on many occasions about numbers on my mobile. And I let it go, and then I kind of look at it, and it generally is a number that's a bit of a scam, or definitely a scam, or suspicious. And there is these websites that do come up, and there is things that it's like there's comments made by certain people, and they'll say, yes, this phone number called me, and it claimed to be this bank, or it claimed to be this service provider of some kind. They nearly caught me out, be careful of this number. So there is, at least there's that bit of thing out there that can help. Even if it isn't foolproof, it can help you, and it has been beneficial to me. And the thing that always gets me is, the thing that helps me is what Raymond says is, if they don't leave a message, it means the call isn't that important or it's a scam in the first place. Because with my answer phone on the landline, it goes on automatically, of course, after a couple of rings, and then they just hang up right away. Or sometimes it does a big automated message that makes absolute no sense, so you don't call it back.
That Googling a phrase from your email works as well. If you receive an email that says that one of your relatives, and it looks as though it comes from your relatives, is stuck somewhere and they need money, that kind of thing, just take a few sentences from it, stick it into Google, and you'll see that somebody else has reported that these emails are going around and they're being copied. But just because you don't find something out there that says it's a scam doesn't mean that it's okay.
Yeah, you used to be able to filter these words out in Google. Maybe more on the desktop now. I'm not able to do it on my phone. But yeah, any title of an email that had my name in it, like Raymond or "You've won" or something like that, I would just insert into the filter, and they would just go immediately to spam. So all those prizes I never claimed are unclaimed. But I'm just wondering if Robbie's found any solution to this issue for himself. And if he hasn't, there's obviously a resource there that is required for some people.
I don't actually have a phone, and I've never had a phone because there's no way I'd be able to use a phone. If sometimes I end up putting a phone number for my Wi-Fi SIM card in my Wi-Fi dongle, but that doesn't get round things because when I first moved, most of my friends were about 40 miles away. They could hardly come round to make a call for me. Even now, they're 12 mile away. So there just doesn't seem to be a solution.
So how do you make phone calls, Robbie? Do you use public phones, or do you get someone else to make calls for you?
Someone else makes calls for me on their phone. I don't own a phone, and I've never owned a phone.
That seems like a fair enough filter if you trust the person and you can get their time, when you need it.
The problem is I don't have anyone much available. When you get urgent issues like banks blocking my cards or dealing with the likes of Scottish Power when they're screwing up my bills again, there's just nowhere to turn. I got 1 hour with my therapist, the only person I got locally.
So it's only the therapist, because I was going to suggest that maybe you send an email to whoever makes these calls for you and saying, I have this urgent issue. Can someone assist me by making the call?
I just haven't got anyone available because of this data protection crap. Because of having to be in the same room and having to answer all the security crap. And the building site even used crap about me protecting my money. Well, it's my money. Why can't you provide me a way of stopping my car being blocked that's not phone based?
Briefly, I remember doing this for my mother when I was an advocate for her as a rep. She used to have to identify herself and give a password or a code or something like that, and then I took over the call, which is usually the way it works. So the same thing with a stranger, perhaps.
Yeah, when I got it was basically my dad had done phone calls for me. I think maybe one or two others, but they have to check that I'm actually there in the room, and I've got to give permission for that to happen. And even that itself is anxiety inducing. And not just that, it's pride bruising, it's like it bruises the pride a bit, yes, he's making a phone call for me, it's okay if you can talk about me with this person, because I'm not able to do it. I know it shouldn't be, things are the way they are. It's nothing to be ashamed of, but it's just not a nice situation to be in. But at least it's an option where someone's actually helping out. And other than Robbie's saying that there's hardly someone out there to do it for himself.
There's even this inconvenience with all the security stuff about them wanting to send a text. Well, I've got a dongle for Wi-Fi dongle. I can't receive text. With a phone company, I spent all morning to get them to find another way of doing security. It took them all morning to accept that I don't have a phone, so I can't receive a text.
I think it's the attitude as well of why don't you have a phone? You should have a phone. It's like people have choices, and it's like not being online, and that seemed like an insult to, to companies in a way. Well, I suppose that they do things in their own way for, obvious reasons, but it's like if you don't do the things like take those kind of options up because it doesn't suit you or doesn't help you, and you're doing it for your own health and your own well-being. It's like, yeah, as well as Ruben says, as not having a TV, it's just like, that's strange, that's odd. You're being awkward, so we're not going to help you. It's that attitude that's appalling. People have things for, real, genuine reasons. And I can understand the phone thing, Robbie. I totally get it. I mean, why have something that's going to cause you distress?
A lot of sites you can't sign up without providing a phone number. You'll often have to cheat and use the phone number for SIM card and the Wi-Fi dongle, but then there comes a problem. Sometimes they might try and insist in sending a text which I can't receive.
Yeah, the thing about text is they make out that option is the easy option for everybody, which clearly from this example isn't. And that is a concern. It just shows you how many people are impacted, though, and will be impacted by this, because text message is the so-called norm now, and it's the easiest way to provide information or to provide your identity.
With one of my bank cards, I don't even know whether there's an option to receive all the one-time codes via email.
This does seem like a required resource.
They should always provide as many options as possible. I mean, even with a phone, even with email, even with a lot of these options that they do provide, even then it's not easy. Sometimes you even need to phone to prove your identity. And what they'll say, we're protecting your identity, security, we're doing you a favour. And it's not helpful. If they're not helpful, you know why they do things the way they do, but it's really frustrating, that there's people out there, as Robbie's just said, it causes so much anxiety alone, this sort of thing, like access to bank accounts and access to your actual thing, but it's meant that the things in place to protect you is actually harming you.
Is it protecting us from the internet itself? I always ask this question at this point. What was it like before the internet? Did we need this amount of security?
I think it's to save them from getting sued.
I think it's more important than that. We used to stand in queues in banks to pay cash in, to arrange bills to be paid, to write checks, and I personally would not like to go back to that world, because I don't live in a world where I only have the gas, the electric to pay. I live in a world where I have subscriptions to things and I have direct debits, and so the complex world that we live in using the internet and using mobile banking and such like, for me, is a real advantage as an autistic person. I don't have to stand in a place full of people and queue and queue and queue. To some extent, what you're saying, Robbie, is absolutely your choice. Your choice is for good reasons not to engage with that world. And that is always going to disable you in some way. There are some ways around it for some things, but if they can, they will remove them as much as possible because of the cost of it. Having anything that's slightly different means that they have to train their operators to deal with that. So it's all about cost for the companies you're dealing with. I do believe that for various disabled groups, they offer alternatives for banks, like these little dongle screen things that act as a little way of proving you are who you are, because it's a physical device and you put your own numbers into it, so that can prove that it's you that they're speaking to. I don't know whether they've been completely stopped now, but you can ask for them, I believe, on banks. But some of the other things you're saying, the workarounds are complex. I get it.
The final post for tonight is from neurodivergent Lou, who is a blogger finding a place in a neurotypical world. And it's about autism and haircuts. It's a presentation. So autism and haircuts. Why might haircuts be difficult for autistic people? Well, there's the expectation of sitting still, struggling to process instructions like take a seat, tilt your head, etc. Small talk, coping with change in appearance, a different haircut than usual. The sensation of water dripping down neck, being touched, different smells merging together, bright lights, loud noise, hair dryers, clippers, music, talking, feeling of freshly cut hair, itchy hair down back or neck, temperature, the unfamiliar environment, struggling to express pain or discomfort, lack of control, and not knowing what's going to happen. That's a few issues that's raised by that. What's all your thoughts?
I'd go mostly for the latter one, which is busy with other people. It's like that causes anxiety in me and used to lead to panic attacks. It was like an endurance test to actually sit through a haircut, even though I don't mind all the other aspects of it too much. But it was just that intimidating kind of trap you feel you're in with no escape. Sometimes you can go through that and come out the other end a bit relaxed, but as soon as the bell went and someone came in the barber shop again, it's like, oh, there's another person waiting behind me. So even talking about it can get me going. So, yeah, I cut my own hair now, which can be good and bad.
Yeah, I too have tended to cut my own hair, which has been sometimes good and kind of mostly bad. I was just thinking when I was listening that in my early 20s, obviously back then I didn't know that I was autistic, but I remember having to leave halfway through a haircut. I just couldn't cope. So I just left with it half done. I was like, poor guy was like, I'm so sorry if I've done anything. And I had no idea, I couldn't have put the why into words, but it was just all too much. And that had been my experience with haircuts before. Yeah, I think we've spoken about this before, but I feel like the easiest thing's either shave it all off or just grow it and neglect it.
I'm just grateful I'm bald. But the thing is, I'm not completely bald. And I used to go to the same barbers In Balloch, it was fairly quiet. But even then, even though it was the same people when I went down, it was the familiar place, I just hated the experience. And the thing I hated about the experience, not just the hair down the back of the neck, but just the small talk. And they always asked, "Are you working today? Are you off work today?" And they weren't being bad, they're just talking. They were nice people. It's just, and I can remember just blabbing away and just, talking a lot of nonsense, really. Just for the small talk's sake. And I just found that uncomfortable. But what has happened is COVID changed things. Certainly for me, is because obviously the barber's shut because everything's shut. And my dad got a razor and he does his own hair. So what he does is he does mine now as well. So it's kind of changed that I don't actually go, I just go to my dad's now. And even though the small talk thing and that goes out the window, the hair coming down the back of my neck still remains. So it's lessened it a bit, but yeah, and that's only with a wee bit of hair. I don't know what it's like for people with long hair.
Very briefly, can you do a razor cut at number 2 or something like that? Not a total shave off, but just like, a little hedgehog bowl cut.
Yeah, it's never been completely shaved. It's kind of been at a certain level where you can still see the hair, the bits with the hair and the baldy bit. Same kind of style as my dad, I suppose.
Well, I was spoiled for years having a hairdresser come round the house. But nowadays I just go to the barber the cake and have the beard trimmed.
Oh, the luxury of someone coming round your house to cut your hair.
Yeah, when it comes to my beard, even though my beard isn't that big, I'd rather do my own, because one time that I got a barber to trim my beard, I felt he nearly shaved it, even though he didn't. It just felt that way. It's that kind of trust issue. Don't get me wrong, I've done it myself. I've made mistakes, and that's why I've ended up being shaven. But that's another story for another day. So thanks, everyone. That was a great discussion tonight. We went through all kinds of discussions, up and down, as we always do. Thanks for everybody, including Robbie, for sharing those posts. Really enjoyed speaking about the different topics. And thanks everybody taking part tonight in the discussion. So this is Harry's Facebook for Sunday, the 6th of April 2025, and it's part of the 5:55 Autistic Radio Spectrum Voices Conversation, which is every Sunday, UK time at 5:55 to 7:30 PM. So thanks again for taking part and me waffling on as usual. So I'll say again, thanks again for taking part, and I'll hand over to Jules.
Thank you, Harry. This is the part of the show where we look at what we're doing here through the autistic charity that we create ourselves, Autistic People, Autistic Association, which supports Autistic Radio in its work. And then in the edit, I will go on and do the recording that we've already made at the beginning of this. So there we go, guys. I'm going to switch off now. Sorry to anybody who's listening to us live, but this is the end of the recording now. And we're all going back to be very tired. Bye-bye. Ending stream.